Very banana business.
We talk about the things you think about. Hey, hey, hey.
Hello, everyone.
Welcome to another episode of the Very Banana Business, where we explore various topics of importance. Today's topic is a personal is of personal interest to both me and Sue, so I hope you'll enjoy it as well. And I think it would have a few segments, in my opinion, since it's such a topic that is so wide and not very often talked about and has many aspects. And it's to do with work, the 9 to 5, the hustle, the rat race. For a while, I thought that this subject was quite taboo because nobody would speak about it. And when I moved here to Europe, I didn't realize what I was getting into. I never worked a 9 to 5 job before 2017. I worked different types of jobs. I made my schedule the way that I wanted it. I lived in a place where I had the privilege of choosing my hours, work throughout the day. I worked long hours sometimes, but it was at my own leisure, the way I liked. And I took days off. I took weeks or months off whenever I felt like it, because the job that the freelance type of work I was doing made it easy. And moving from the third world to Europe and starting that 9 to 5, boy, was that a nightmare. And for a while, I thought like I was a complete failure on this most part, because I couldn't figure out why I couldn't sit on my behind for 8 hours a day and do the same thing over and over again every day, 5 days a week. Mm-hmm. And it came down to 2 years later realizing, oh, okay, so it's not a me thing. Quite a few people are not okay with this, and this is sort of an outdated type of working strategy. And I'd love to hear the other side of this, my counterpart. So, wanna pop in and give your feedback?
Yeah, well, I think it's really interesting when you mention it that way, especially the change. I think from where you used to work. From a developing area or a third world country, as you mentioned, and then this whole change. But this also raises another question. I'm wondering, I mean, I'm sure that you were aware that you're going to face a completely different schedule, a completely different work ethic. I'm sure you've done, or I'm sure back then at least you did some kind of mental preparation or some kind of, I don't know, getting ready for it. But do you feel that made a difference? Do you think it made a difference when you got to the real thing and you actually started working those long hours? What would you say?
The jump was quite drastic, actually, even though, come to think of it, I did work the last 8 months before leaving the country that I lived in. I did work a 8 to 3 job. But because it was there, it wasn't the same kind of pressure. I had a bunch of tasks connected to my position, but then I also did a bunch of things that were not connected to my position. Because the country was in the third world, it also brought about a bunch of dynamics that were not expected. You'd go to work and you never know. It was also a war zone, so you never know if you're going to have to evacuate the day, if you're going to have to deal with very mundane, office issues. It was all sorts of things that were basically very different to life here in Europe. And coming to Europe, I can't say that I was really prepared for this, especially jumping into a corporate world. Corporate world is extremely strict comparing to the freelance and free, easygoing, even though it wasn't always easygoing, but it was very, it was a lot of excitement going on in the previous place that I was at. So I can't say that I was prepared. It was really a shock. And I remember coming home crying at the beginning. I had an intensive training to go through before I would start working there. And it really was you learning how to grind, how to prove yourself that you're worthy. And that really got to me, if I'm honest. It was, I'd come home every other day at the beginning thinking that I'm a failure, that I can't do this. And I couldn't for the life of me figure out how I came from a place where I worked so many hours. I did different types of work. I met so many people. My work was extremely interesting too. Coming down to a new place, starting a new job, and feeling like I can't fit in. Feeling like I was forced to do the same thing every day from 9 to 5. And it was extremely overwhelming. The adaptation took me a long time, and at the end of it, I never adapted. At the end of it, I realized that I'm not made for this. This isn't what I want to do for the rest of my life.
Yeah, I think I see what you mean. Yeah, I get what you mean. But the thing is, though, when you think of it, it's kind of this is a reality of most of the modern world. What you're describing,
absolutely.
Yeah, especially if we take into consideration the whole history of this work ethic, or this let's call it the work week, the 9 to 5, the 8 hour per day, or the 40-hour work week as it's usually known. I mean, this is how most of the developed world has been working for almost the past 100 years, I think, since the start of the 20th century. And believe it or not, this is actually an improvement from the very grim early days of capitalism. I mean, back then it wasn't strange for factory owners to work their laborers up to brutal 100 hours per week.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
That's horrible if you think of it. So we did get an upgrade with this 40-hour work week. I'm not trying to minimize what you were just complaining about. I mean, I get it, and it's not easy by any means. It's really hard, this daily grind of, especially when it's a repetitive issue. And maybe this comes down to one of the topics that the famous economist Adam Smith mentioned, which is at his time, because the Industrial Revolution was slowly starting, and he talked a lot about the division of labor, how it increases productivity dramatically, but at the cost of the laborer himself or herself. Maybe he didn't fully develop this line of thought until Marx came along, and with his concept of alienation and all of that. Yeah, and he talked in more detail about how harmful this division of labor, when one worker only does a very small part of the whole job. So let's say we're building a laptop, and you've got one worker who only works on the audio plugs. That's all he does, or that's all she does. She doesn't do anything. She has no say in the whole laptop except for the audio plugs. And I think this does have a negative effect on the individual laborer. Yeah, it is quite. I think it's quite painstaking. But we do have to recognize that this is kind of better than how the whole project started. And I think the early strikers and the early protesters from the late 19th century and 20th century, we owe them a big thank you for cutting down their horrible working hours to, or at least somehow bringing them to what we have today, the 40-hour work week. But I mean, it isn't all good, because if you look at many of many countries in the developing world, or aka third world countries, especially in recently industrialized cities or regions of China, Bangladesh, India, those kind of areas, many workers endure dismal working conditions, horrible wages. Yeah, they're barely keeping afloat. They're barely covering the bare minimums of life. So they're barely surviving. But I'm not sure if you've heard of the latest. It's not really latest. It's been a few years now, but it was a big controversy surrounding Apple and Foxconn. Have you heard of this company?
No. Tell me.
Yeah, this company was hired. It's a Chinese manufacturer of electronics. So it was hired by Apple, and I think they used to make hardware or something. But there was a leaked documentary from, I think, maybe an undercover journalist or a worker or something, and they showed the living conditions of these factory workers. And I mean, for the average viewer here, when you just see how they work, I mean, it doesn't look any different from slavery. It was so horrendous. And for me, I think that the most horrible scene was when they showed these suicide nets, because they had so many suicides. So what they did was, they had on all the floors, they had nets. So this means you can't even enjoy your suicide. You can't even check out. It's like hell. It's worse than it's like a really nasty joke where there's no end to it. And even if you want to kill yourself, you can't. I mean, imagine how bad things are if you're living, or if this is the only way you can make a living, working in. Of course, Apple said no, this is not true. Foxconn is a manufacturer, blah blah blah. I remember even Steve Jobs himself spoke about this, and he mentioned he responded to some of the journalists who were accusing Apple of hiring cheap labor and whatnot. But I don't want to just diss on China in particular. I think it's a worldwide thing, because if you check the Japanese as well, they've got a really serious work ethic, and it's almost religious. They've even got a word for death from overwork, karoshi.
Yeah. Heard of it.
Yeah, and the Americans, the USA isn't much better actually. If you see the statistics, if you read the statistics about their working hours compared to the Europeans, it says that Americans on average, they work 230 hours more than their European counterparts. So imagine 2,300 hours, 230 hours more. That's, I mean, if you take it, that's almost 10 days. It's, a little less than 10 days. But this is how much they're working more than their European counterparts. So it's quite a big change. So I think the only thing one can hope for is the recent worker-friendly labor laws in Scandinavia. These seem to be, I think, quite promising. Let's hope they come to fruition, and maybe finally us peasants can get a break or something.
Absolutely. I think I recently read somewhere that Spain is trying out the 4-day working week as well. So this would be quite nice to see if the rest of the world can follow Scandinavians' new worker-friendly labor laws, or Spain's 4-day working weeks. And I mean, our life cannot be narrowed down to everything revolving around working, making money to survive, hustling. Everything is so concentrated on, you have to be the best, you have to be on top, you have to make as much money as possible so you can have the best house, to pay for the land on which you live, which is on planet Earth, and you are from planet Earth. It sounds a bit crazy when you think about it. You're working all of this so you can pay for a box that you live in. It could be a nice box, it could be a big box, it could be very, very nicely done box. It depends on what kind of box you want. And this box is on a place where you actually come from, and you have to pay for all the utilities that come with this box. The lights, the heating, the cooling, the whatever it is that you want to put in this box. You have to pay for all that, including the stuff that you have to put in your own body. And then you want to be able to get all of this in the bigger box you want to have. It means that you have to invest more. In some cases, this means that you need to go to university, take out a loan, and then spend a very good part of your life paying back that loan. What?
Yeah.
What? Student loans so you can be part of society? Come on. And then in most cases, you're either, actually there are quite a few cases here where I've gotten in a taxi, and I've, even in the previous country that I lived in, the third world, the taxi driver is very well educated. He's extremely well educated. He's an engineer of some kind, but he's a taxi driver because he can't find a job in the said field that he graduated in, whatever that fancy field may be. So in many cases, they don't get the same kind of job that they wanted to when they were at university. In other cases, they end up working a 9-to-5 in a job that they never really wanted to have, that they didn't really like. They didn't even want to get the qualifications that they went for at university, but they did so because of this pressure of society, this pressure that you have to be somebody, you have to become somebody. And then you have to go through the whole, making sure you have clothes, you have to buy food, you have to feed your kids, pay for schools. And it's a nonstop hustle where you often see people burning out very quickly. You see people burning out in their 30s because they're fighting so hard to get to that place of becoming someone, proving themselves. The life cannot be this. I mean, I'm so confused between the two worlds that I lived in, and the one that I'm living in now, and the one that I lived in before. And I'm like, okay, one was way too, out of control, and the other one is way too in control. And so this is, there has to be a compromise in doing. We can't make a compromise with with our well-being in order to survive on this planet. Because now everything is made so if you think about it, everything is made so quick and easy. Cook quickly, make all kinds of machines that will do things faster for you. Restaurants are popping up and opening, cooking healthy fresh foods for you so you can take to the office, so you can feed yourself while you're doing the 9 to 5 job, rather than being able to maybe perhaps grow your food or go and buy yourself the food and cook it. No, there's no more time for that. No, you go out and you have to work. You have to survive. It's quite a bummer.
Yeah. No, it is. It's completely. It's a very big bummer, especially when we see this. You touched on a very interesting point. The whole university culture, this academic culture. I mean, the loans. They're absurd. They're so crippling. I think if we should discuss one big problem that the developed world suffers from, it's this insane student debt. And just like you said, I mean, there's no guarantee. At least if they pay all of this and there's a guarantee that they come out with, a guaranteed living after that, I mean, we could excuse it at least. But it's there's no guarantee that you'll even get a job after you graduate and after you pay those crazy sums of money. It's if you think of it, it's like a toddler who's just about to start walking, just taking their first steps, and you just tie their legs. No more walking.
Yeah.
And it feels almost the same. You've got these young people who are in their mid-20s, in some cases late 20s, and they come out of these institutions which were supposed to teach them independence, which were supposed to teach them the arts, the humanities, sciences. And they come out indebted. They're confused. They're borderline poor. Their parents are in debt. They're unemployed. They're scraping here and there, trying to make a living. Yeah. They're under pressure, social pressures to be in a relationship, to get married, to have children, to, just like you said, the mortgage, the house, the rent, the utilities, the water, the bill. I mean, where the hell are they going to get all of this money from? So it's just mind-boggling that this is the norm in many developed countries. And I'm not completely dissing on academia in general or the whole culture. I mean, there are a few disciplines where there's just no way around it, because these are, technical, formal kind of disciplines, whether it's medicine, surgery, veterinary medicine, dentistry, these kind of things, or whether we're talking about STEM, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. All of these disciplines, all of these fields, they need the kind of formal training that only a university environment, provides. But even these, believe it or not, they're coming under pressure, because with a click of a button, you'd be surprised at the courses you can find free. I just attended a literature course from Yale, and it's completely free. Another one which is in capitalism, also from Yale, it was completely free. It's crazy. There are so many alternatives to this crippling student debt that a university student has to pay. You will get almost the same certification. You might not. You not just might not. You definitely won't get the certificate which everybody is crazy about, but at least you'll get the education. So I'm not so sure about the validity of this institution anymore in this time and age. And just like you said, it's just academic success rarely translates into professional or financial success. And in today's world, in 2021, it just doesn't do it anymore. And if you check the richest people in the world, or the hottest entrepreneurs today, almost all of them have very little background, academic background. Most of these individuals, they were school dropouts. Many of them, at the end, just like the story of Mark Zuckerberg, he didn't finish his Harvard undergraduate course. He went on to launch Facebook and become like a super billionaire. And then he got an honorary degree from Harvard. You see the irony. Absolutely. He dropped out and he became a billionaire, and then he got the certificate. And it works like this in a funny way. We need to, at least, I think we need to aspire to become like maybe not become like them. We need to become ourselves, of course, but we need to emulate the mindset that freed them from this old institution. I mean, the university institution might have been very important at the age of the Industrial Revolution, or maybe before that, during the Enlightenment, where people were borderline illiterate. But I mean, in today's world, I just don't see it being as important as it used to be. That's what I think.
I couldn't agree more. If you look at some of those, really the most successful people, like you said, some of the most successful people, not everybody, they don't have a degree. They are self-made rich people, and this is awesome. It gives an inspiration to so many people that why not you too? If that person can do it, why can't you? I mean, you can pretty much do anything you set your mind to. But then there comes the other part where society is still not so accepting, you know, but you still get the question with, what did you study? What did you qualify in? What's your qualification? What's your education? Yeah. And you're sitting there like, I still, you know, I still boggle over this, because you could have so much money and you could be extremely successful in what you do, but some people might still ask for that proof of paper. And so many people would tell you, who have studied whatever said subject, and later on they will tell you, actually, we used very little of the material that we studied at university in our jobs. The stuff that we learned was only 10% of what we would use. And yeah, I started to...
That's usually the case, right? Yeah.
So at some point I started to ask around and see how people were feeling about this whole, you know, way of working, and you can imagine coming to a place of I live in an ex-socialist country, or ex-socialist bloc, let's say. So for us, it was I imagine I came off like a spoiled brat to people that thought that I didn't want to work, and I was not saying that at all. I love working on things that I'm truly passionate about. I love working on projects, but when you come down to tell them, like, I can't do this 9 to 5, I can't do this every single day of the week. And I had this girl that I met once when I worked as a head cook, and the hours in restaurants here are just brutal. It's like milking a cow for everything she's got, and then some more. So I met one of the employees at that restaurant. We were having a casual chat about working, and she's quite a bit younger than me, and it was very surprising to see that mindset in that kind of person. Who is locally bred, you know, raised in this society, going to her mom and saying, I can't do this. You know, she was exhausted from working at a vet clinic. And at the time because she's a vet and she's a vet specialist. So at the time she had given up all of that. She said, no, I need to take a break from it's so... In some cases, for so many people, it's so overdone, the kind of work that you do. So I was a chef, and I loved my job as a chef. I love cooking, but I couldn't do it. I ended up hating it so much that I didn't want to do it anymore. It was something similar to her being a vet. The hours that were demanding of them were so abused that at some point she got like, no, I don't want to do this for a while. I need a break from this entirely. I need to try something else. This cannot be my whole life. And when she told her mom, I can't do this every single day, 5 days a week. And her mom's reaction, obviously older generation, was like, but honey, this is how everyone does it. What do you mean you don't want to work 5 days a week? And poor girl was when I heard it, I felt a little bit traumatized, because your own parent cannot understand the concept that has been so deeply ingrained in the way that everyone thinks around here. It's such a norm. Nobody talks about this. So I started, you know, noticing that some people do feel this, even though many people may not talk about it. It does exist. So I wasn't the only one. And I finally felt such a relief to not be the only one. And I started seeing that there were people posting about this, talking about this, that there was a whole thing of people cannot cope with this 9 to 5 pressure of this insisting on being in one place, doing the same thing for 5 days a week, 8 hours a day. Is it still necessary, this abuse of mental power? Do we still need it?
That's the question. I think that's the right question to ask, and I think many sociologists and maybe career advisors and workplace therapists, and these people who are sort of deep in the field, they've been asking this question. And I mean, if you see the statistics on mental health, depression, suicide, you know, they're not looking very good. People are just they're overworked, and it doesn't make sense anymore. I mean, I would understand these working hours at the beginning of the Industrial Revolution, or at least in the beginning of the 20th century. You know, we were just getting from an industrial or a technological point of view, we were just getting on our feet. So maybe we could give some kind of an excuse to those working hours. But I mean, in today's economy, today's economy is actually, especially if we're talking about the industrial world, the most developed areas of the world, it's what you would call a post-industrial society. So industry isn't part of, it's not the backbone of the economy anymore. In countries like the UK, the US, these are all most of the GDP, or gross domestic product, is made through finance and services. So finance, this means investment and that kind of thing, and services is, you know, whether it's education, legal, whether it's legal consulting, whether it's any kind of training, all of these things are considered services. A podcast like this is a service, because we're not producing a tangible object for the consumer to use. And most of the modern economies are like this. And in an economy like this, I don't know if we really need to work the 40-hour work week. It just doesn't make sense. And if you delve even further into the statistics, and you see the striking difference in working hours on average between countries, even in the EU itself, you'd be quite amazed. Because, for example, let me give you an example. The countries which we typically think of as, you know, lazy, slacking, ex-socialist, communist, the Eastern Bloc, you know, Eastern Europe, they always get get hated on. But if you see the statistics, Bulgaria and Romania, both of them, have the highest average working hours in the whole EU. I mean, Bulgaria, on average, they work 40.4 hours per week. And Romania, they work 40.5 hours per week. And this is higher than the EU average itself, which is 36.2 hours per week. Remember, these statistics are just 2 years old. This is 2019. So this is still kind of fresh. And what's even more ironic or shocking, you know, the countries that you think are the most innovative, the most industrious, the most conscientious, you'd probably think of Germany, maybe to a lesser extent the Netherlands. These two, believe it or not, they work the least number of hours in the whole EU. Yes, the Netherlands, they just work 29.3 hours a week. Imagine. yes. Compare 29.3 hours a week in the Netherlands compared to 40.4 in Bulgaria. That's just insane. And this is the average. Keep in mind, when we say average, there are probably people who are working more than this if we see it on an individual level. Of course, there are some that work less, but these numbers are on average. So this brings us back to your very pertinent question. I mean, do we really need these working hours? I mean, you can't claim the Germans are lazy or slacking, or not industrious, or you can't call the Dutch exactly slackers or uncreative people, because their economies are doing pretty well, actually. Germany is still the power horse of Europe, despite working less than the EU average. So, I mean, if we take these numbers and if we take these statistics at face value, I would say maybe we don't really need these working hours anymore. That's what I would say. I'm not sure if you agree or not, but it doesn't seem like we need them anymore. At least not like we did at the turn of the last century.
You know, at some point in this, while you were sharing all of this, I wanted to say, God, we sound like very pompous, young millennials, maybe, like, how dare we by challenging challenging what we've been doing for so many years. Like, how dare we come in here and say, like, we don't need to work as much. And I think this is something that many of us have. We have as a programming that is indented in us. Some people have the mindset that you only receive when you work really hard, that you need to bust your behind. You've seen mom and dad do that. So that's the programming that we've lived with our whole lives. That's our reality. That's what is expected and respected, right? And then you come in and you hear a podcast like this that says, actually, there are plenty of people that are very successful that don't actually work as nearly or half as much as the hours that you think need to be worked at in order for you to be considered a good citizen of society, let's say. And they're very successful. They make a lot more money.
True.
And they have leisure at the palm of their hands. They decide that they can enjoy life. And I can imagine why that might sound very pompous. That may sound very audacious to a lot of people. Like, oh, the audacity! How dare you think that you can have all of that and not put in half as much of the dent of work that I've put in? I mean, I think that we create our reality. And
it's true, but sorry to interrupt, but I want to add to your point, because if you take it from a superficial, I mean, if you take your statement that we just don't want to work, yeah, it might sound pompous, but I think it's the issue of working smart rather than working hard, especially since our economy is, it's almost all services, which is entrepreneurship. It's non-tangible products. People don't rely on making shoes and cars like they used to. You could be really successful, and all you do is provide some kind of educational service, some kind of entertainment service. Actors, musicians, artists, all of these are doing pretty well, and they're not producing tangible products to consume. They are producing services. So
definitely.
I think it's all about working smart. If we're able to work smart without working hard, we should think of ourselves, we should be more efficient. That's the idea, rather than being workhorses or just cows going around the mill. This might have been okay, like I said, in the Industrial Revolution, but at this age, it just doesn't cut it anymore.
Speaking of that, it's something that I came across recently, got me thinking on the exact same topic. There was recently released something called Foundation app, where you can, if you're an artist, a 3D artist, an animator, any kind of digital design or art that you do online, even actually if you're an artist that you do by hand, you can always scan it or take a picture of it and sell it. So this Foundation app, people are selling their art for cryptocurrency, and you would see some of the insane stuff that is being sold for 0.2 Ethereum. Wow. And it's based on Ethereum as far as I understand, and you can only get on this Foundation app if you have an invite. But it's quite amazing how they've created this platform and people are buying it. You can't physically touch any of this, but you can sell it. Someone is selling a picture, an image, a 3D design, whatever it is. Some of them are really cool, but some of them are completely ridiculous. Some chick is sitting there eating oranges, and these 1-minute videos are being sold of her eating something or doing something completely ordinary. But someone out there is a buyer. Someone likes seeing that kind of stuff, someone else eating. There's an entire, ASMR market for it, if it's audio or not. So True. It really comes down to, you're right, if you're creative, you can make money just with anything. If you search on YouTube, like easy passive incomes or quick and easy ways to make money, you would find insane things. Like, I recently came across one that said handwritten letters. Some people really want to have a handwritten letter, and they don't have good handwriting, so they pay someone else to do it. They ask you to send a card or a letter. They send you the writing probably on email. You write it down if you have pretty handwriting, and you send it, and you've made some cash. You can make cash by taking pictures. If you've always loved taking pictures, now getting a professional camera and learning how to use it, and then you end up getting quite a bit of money for that, becoming a photographer. And you don't have to be doing it for National Geographics or any of these big names of magazines or travel companies. You don't have to be a paid traveler. You can do this freelance and make a living out of this. So it really is.
Hmm.
You're right. It isn't necessary. I think we're breaking into a new age, a new era, where we're becoming more tech savvy, tech friendly, and using that to our advantage. But that's not the only thing. There are We are creatures of habit, and this is a hard one to break. For our culture, we've been used to doing
It
things this
is.
way. That's why, even in myself, when I'm saying these things, when I'm saying like this isn't necessary to do, there is still some part of me that goes like, but is it really? Should we not do what mommy and daddy did? Did they, they broke their butts, working really hard, my grandparents and all that. And, it was all about grinding, 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 hustling, making everything work. That's how you shine. It's going through the whole process of becoming a diamond. Diamonds go through a lot of pressure to become diamonds. So, but people are waking up a little bit by little by bit, little by little. I came across a documentary on health not long ago, and
Hmm.
there was a doctor that spoke about how when he worked in the general medical institution, I think it was in an ER or a hospital. No, it wasn't an ER. It was a medical center of some sort, a public one, where he was given about 10
Hmm.
minutes with patients. He said, I never had time to get an understand of a root cause of the problem that the patient was dealing with. I didn't have time to sort of dig deep and see where the problem may have come from, but rather prescribe something to deal with the symptoms. At some point, he got fed up of this, and he opened his own practice because of this. Perhaps this was one of the reasons, but yeah, he didn't have time. It was always quickly get rid of as soon as possible. There are a lot of patients to deal with. Yes, there is an overload, but at the same time, you don't have that human to human connection anymore, and you need to go down to the deep root cause of this, whatever that may be. So maybe we've been living in a world that is trying to reach quotas at the end of a month, making sure we meet our monthly hours or weekly hours. So where are we? Where would we be going with this if we were going with it somewhere?
Yeah, that's the issue. Because in the way I see it, because I've worked, I had a short stint with a corporate job for about a year or something, and when I left them, they were like, "What? Why are you leaving?" And I told them, "I don't know how I stayed this long. This is completely not in my nature. I don't know how I did it." But the issue was they had working quotas, not on results, not on tangible numbers that they wanted to reach. The quotas were just for the workers to reach the hours they wanted them to work. They still had the same kind of factory mentality, the sort of the remnants of the industrial revolution of having to work an X number of hours per day. They just brought it into the office, and in the office we don't produce anything. We don't produce needles. We don't produce laptops. We don't produce hardware. We don't even produce software. It was a medical representative a company. So we were basically, in a way, advertisers for a certain product. I didn't understand why we had to come and we had to stay a certain number of hours in the office and then a certain number of hours in the field. And I just didn't get, and we weren't incentivized to be smart. So, for example, if
Let's
I
say
made a
one
huge
day.
sale in, let's say, one day, you would think that I should be allowed to have the rest of the day off, or at least the rest of the week, because I covered, let's say, an X number of
Hmm.
dollars sold. But they don't think like this. They think, just like you said, it's a quota of hours, and for me, that quota of hours is almost worse than the quota of tangible products, like, for example, a certain number of cars from the line, the factory line, or a certain number of laptops from a laptop plant, or a number of batteries, or a thing like this. And the more you think of it, it's actually ironic, because the way we're headed is going to be exactly the opposite. Because just like you touched on the issue of the platform, the foundation platform, the application, and there are dozens of communities like this, whether it's art, whether it's music. Whether if we're talking about music, there are so many thousands and thousands of self-made artists release tracks on TikTok, on Spotify, on SoundCloud, and they've managed to monetize it, and they rely on donations through
Yeah.
Patreon, through little trailers on Facebook. It's a thriving community. You've got in the adult industry, you've got OnlyFans. You just subscribe to a certain performer, actress, or actor, and there you are. You've got private access to the content of that performer. So it's amazing how many ways, or how many avenues social media and the internet has opened for individuals. In a way, just like you said, we're entering a new age. It's a completely different system. It's the age of creativity, and it's the age of content production,
Yeah,
content creation. Your
absolutely.
content could be anything, whether, just like you said, whether art, whether music, whether writing. There's a whole market for research, for essays, for, just like you said, handwriting. So it's an amazing time to be in. But this doesn't come with its sort of dystopian side, as all developments in history have. I mean, if we look back just before the Industrial Revolution, because textiles, which is making cloths and
Hmm.
cotton and wool and all of that, it was one of the first things that was manufactured on a large industrial scale. So textiles, I think, weirdly enough, we owe them a thank you for kickstarting the Industrial Revolution, because before that you had everything was manual. Just the same kind of
Yeah.
manual weaving machines you see when they show people from Peru and the Incas, weaving that wool and those kind of images. That was how it was for the rest of the world. But when the Industrial Revolution came, they managed to automate that, or they managed to mechanize it to be done on an industrial scale. And then you had a whole movement of people called the Luddites, and these people destroyed the machines,
Why?
and they destroyed as much as they could, because they saw it as a way threatening their livelihood. Because if you have a machine doing this for them, then they can't live anymore. Their livelihoods will be threatened, and they did have a point. But the thing is, history always flows in a way that's not only unexpected, but it follows efficiency. So despite all their intentions, and despite all the machines the factories they dismantled and destroyed, it was a lost cause. Now they're extinct. Everybody uses it's the industrial age. Everybody uses factories to manufacture large scale, whether it's textile, whether it's cars, whether it's nobody does anything manually except for few niche products. I don't know, maybe watches,
Yeah,
luxury
no,
items,
but you.
jewelry, things like this are
Sorry
still.
to cut you
You've
off,
got some artisans.
but we still
Hmm.
do have, and we have that stuff emerging. We still have, because I'm a huge fan of handmade, and I do try to look for things that are handmade, or little places or small companies or people that are still using the old ways of producing clothes in a more conscious way. And it's always quite nice to see that, whether they're, it's kitchen
Hmm.
utensils, whether they're wood carved or plates, or there are people going back to that. There's so many. Speaking of all of this, while we're having this whole war in the city with becoming doing our 9 to 5, the hustling, there's plenty of young people moving to the sticks, moving to the countryside, to the mountains, to going back to nature and working with stuff that is either connected to farming, agriculture, making small companies of cheese, or uh, there's
Hmm.
these. There are people that are going back to these handmade ages. They're recognizing that the connection that they had then to working with nature, being close to nature, being in a calm and quiet place, rather than to have to hustle and bustle your 9 to 5 job, is perhaps more important. I'm seeing a lot of young ones going back to that, and that's quite cool. So yeah, the it
it is. I think it is nice. It is nice to buy from a small scale business owner. These kind of mom and pops kind of shops, or like you said, dairy products, cheese and whatnot. But the sad fact of the matter is, these people just cannot compete with large scale industry, large scale farming, large scale manufacturing. You get the idea. They just can't compete because they're in they have two major disadvantages. First of all, their cost of operation will be a lot higher than a larger plant. This is one thing. So this means their products, when they're finished, they're going to cost the consumer a lot more. This is the similar story to Rolls-Royce, because Rolls-Royce, most of the things, actually, believe it or not, even parts of the engine itself and the whole interior, the embroidery, the leather seat, one of the reasons it's so expensive, it's handmade, and you've got the name of the person who actually knitted the whole thing and sewed the whole leather, and you get the idea. You get the same personal relationship
Yeah,
with the craftsman or the artisan that you were speaking about. You get it, but this is only it's been relegated only for luxury products. You get the idea. So if you're a super rich person, you can afford this special connection to the artisan or the artist or the manufacturer who made this product for you, whether it's food or whether
I
it's
agree, but
another
it definitely,
product.
there is a market for it. Just like there are buyers of Rolls-Royce, there are people that really value
There is.
quality, that value
There
not
is.
industrial production of food,
Of course.
because there are downsides to industrial production. We're more and more seeing how the industrial production is actually
Of course, yeah.
decreasing the quality of the product. So if we're having industrially produced vegetables, they're decreased in quality because they're being sprayed or they're being maintained in some kind of way for them to be mass produced. So in an ideal world, it's better to be buying from a community producer rather than a mass industrial producer, because the quality will be better. They won't be using any kind of pesticides or crap in it. In order for something to be industrially produced, there have to be corners cut. From personal experience, I've seen it. I've seen what needs to be done in order to cook big quantities. I've seen what needs to be done in order to preserve stuff to last longer. It's not always pretty, and it's usually made for the fast pace. You've got a busy life. You have a specific amount of time. You have a specific amount of money. So you're gonna go and buy the generic stuff that is mass produced. A lot of the cheese that you buy from mass producing companies is made from powdered milk. It's not made from fresh and actual milk. So,
True.
I mean, what does that mean? Industrial producers of milk and of dairy products means that they're using low quality. They're basically milking the cow for everything that she's got, pumping her with all kinds of hormones in order for her to mass produce. And that's not authentic. That's not healthy, even for the person that is consuming it. So there, like I said, corners need to be cut. So if you want to have a better quality of life, you would make a corner cut of maybe cost and pay more for something that is, it's the same thing with the Rolls-Royce. Sure. Yes, it is a luxury thing. You don't need that kind of car, but yeah, it's you don't need that kind of car, but if you can afford it, it is a bit different, obviously, because you don't need the car, but you do need the food. But
yeah. True. Yeah, but that's the issue, because just like you mentioned, I completely agree with what you said. It's an issue of quality versus quantity and cost. What the industrialists, or let's say industrial scale, whether it's farming, whether it's manufacturing, whatever it is, they have the huge advantage they have is cost. Cost is on their side, because they sell it to the customer much more cheaper. And for the average customer who's not well off, I mean, they don't have the luxury of buying organic vegetables every day. I don't know if you're aware of how much more expensive it is to buy organic fruit and vegetables compared to regular market vegetables and fruit. So for someone who's barely making rent, it's a case closed for them. They will of course never buy the organic, no matter how healthier it is, no matter how much you advertise it. They'll tell you, just give me the toxic tomatoes. I can't afford anything else, because it's going to be either the toxic tomatoes or no tomato at all. They don't have the option of organic
Absolutely,
food,
it's
or buying
ridiculous.
from an
It's
that's the
an
sad
abused.
truth,
Even this is
unfortunately. So
abused. The fact that it's grown organic. Some of them
it
are putting
is.
insane prices on their products in order to say like, oh, this is organic, it's bio.
But you know what? So, that's the issue, because here we go again to small scale and large scale manufacturing, and this is more of, I think maybe it's more in the field of economics. But if you're a small scale producer and you produce only a small patch of uh, of tomatoes, you cannot but sell it for this high price in order to be profitable to continue.
No.
Otherwise, you're going to go
I'm
under.
not
You get the
speaking
idea?
about.
So these organic producers all are also in a, they're stuck between a rock and a tight corner. They also don't have much option except to increase their prices in order to be profitable and continue producing their organic product. And they do
Yeah,
have a market
no.
for it,
I
but
get
it's not
what you're
for
saying, but
everyone.
I wasn't speaking about those guys. The at least from my perspective, the grandma or the grandpa that I buy from in the market, knowing that they grew this themselves. Now I'm speaking about there are bio companies, there are organic companies that are charging a lot more, and some of them are really crazy out there. Going to buying avocado from the market is one price, and then going to a supermarket that is organically, so they say, organically grown, and the avocado was like 4 or 5 times the price, and you kind of can't understand where do these avocados come from.
Yeah.
So no, I totally get what you're saying. It is a question of the person needs it to be profitable for them too. So yes, that makes sense. And it isn't, like you said, it isn't for everyone. Not everyone can afford it. It's so much cheaper to buy a burger from McDonald's than it is to buy yourself vegetables to make a salad. And that's crazy if you think about it. What kind of world do we live in
True.
that we have to make compromises with our health because society has dictated that, not society, but the world is dictated in such a way that we have to make these kind of choices.
Yeah, but you know what's for me, what's really interesting, even this world that we're talking about, according to many futurists and maybe one of the most famous ones is
Yeah.
currently
I'm
is
reading one of his
Yuval
books
Harari.
now.
I don't know if you've heard of him. Yeah, very, very interesting historian, and he's talking about how the world is sort of entering this new age, and his last book is called 21 Lessons for the
Mm-hmm.
21st century. And in this book, it's a collection of essays and talks and different responses to questions he's had. And he's saying that if he's the sort of the gist of his message is humanity is inevitably heading to a crisis of unemployment like never before. And the reason is just three words: artificial intelligence and algorithms. I mean, anybody who's been following big tech and Google and all of these latest trends might be familiar with AI and algorithms. But I mean, before we can even dismiss such a claim as his as fear mongering or being exaggerated, just think of the many jobs that we took for granted in the past, and they're just not needed anymore. I could think of the bank teller. I could think of travel agents, because it's all online, and this is even before the social media and the smartphone explosion. This was just by regular desktop internet. If we're talking about travel agents, because with websites like Booking, like Hotel.com,
True.
you just don't need a travel agent anymore. You can book your ticket, you can book your hotel, you can book your whole thing, you can give reviews, you can check reviews, you can deal with the hotel almost directly, and there's no need for the travel agent or any of their fees. The same story with the bank teller. I mean, since the advent of ATMs, you don't really need the bank teller to count and money and give it back to you. You can do that with the machine. You can deposit, you can withdraw. You might need a bank employee in maybe an administrational kind of position to open an account or that kind of thing, or if you've got a complaint or HR or whatever. But the whole bank telling process itself, the one we used to see in movies when someone goes to the window and
Yeah,
there's
yeah,
someone
yeah.
standing. Oh, I need to
90s
draw
movies.
$1,000. She counts. You don't have that anymore. It's gone. It's an extinct job. And according to Yuval Harari, there are so many jobs which are facing the same, the same fate. And another even funnier point is where you were speaking earlier about
Yeah.
medical doctors, about the guy who's spending just 10 minutes, and he's just so overworked and stressed. This is actually one of the jobs that Yuval Harari is predicting to be from the jobs which are going to be cut down, and soon enough this will become less and less necessary. The job of I'm talking here specifically about the diagnosis, the part of the doctor's job, which is diagnosis. Because if you check the current statistics on mental health and drug abuse, depression, suicide, usually medical doctors are at the top, according to a U.S. statistic in 2019. But the thing is, with these new algorithms from deep learning, deep machine learning, which is just another fancy way of saying advanced artificial intelligence, AI was able to reach a correct diagnosis.
Wow.
87% of the time, compared to a trained professional who was able to do this 86% of the time. I mean, you might think,
but
you might say, okay, it's just 1%.
This being said,
so
like
what?
This machine gets to learn, right? It gets to evolve with time. Yeah.
That's it. That's the issue. This is what deep learning means. It means this machine is teaching itself each time. Each time it's getting, with every cycle, it's learning more, it's getting more data. And with more data, less errors. With less errors, higher specificity, higher, accuracy. It's getting better all the time. And this number is compared to a trained professional. And when we say trained professional, you have to take into account the tens of thousands of hours to get a regular medical graduate, for example, like myself, to get me to a level of a consultant in a subspecialty of medicine. This is going to take from 5 to 10 years, and this will need a number of supervisors who are actively teaching me this new subspecialty, and tens of thousands of hours, and probably tens of thousands of dollars as well, to get to the same results that a machine can do on its own, with a a bit of programming in the beginning. And this is, if you think of it, the implications of this are overwhelming. And soon these doctors who are complaining of being overworked, they're going to find themselves in a very tricky spot with no job. I would say very, very soon.
When we spoke about this before, and I was feeling a little bit like it was far-fetched, and it's making me feel quite uneasy. But now I can say that this can open doors to an entire new world of existence for the people that are not going to have those jobs. So if a lot of those jobs are obsolete for people, then that means that maybe the world will not need to function on you need to grind in order to have something. Maybe it will be more of a, you will have opportunities to grow in directions you never thought possible. You would have opportunities to discover who you really are and not have to sit behind a desk job that you can't stand. Because that's what most people are doing. They're doing desk jobs or whatever kind of jobs that they can't stand because they need the money. What if life gives an opportunity that you won't have to do that for the rest of your life? You won't have to specialize in a career that you don't really believe in. It might happen that the job for this set person might be something that doesn't even exist yet, since we were talking about new and innovative ways to make money. Who knows what is hiding inside each of us that we haven't even discovered yet, because the world has been way too loud in making all kinds of requests of us to participate in all sorts of bogus ways. So if it quiets down, who would we discover that we are underneath inside that silence? No. Yeah. So I turned that to my listeners.
Great question.
I'd like to know, how does all of this sound to you? Does it sound a bit like out of a movie? The concept of everything going, not everything, but a good part of it going AI? We would love to hear what you think on these topics that we discussed today. And the 9 to 5, do you agree? Do you disagree? What kind of jobs do you do? Our listeners, what do you work? If you'd like to share, feel free to drop a comment down below. Thank you for tuning in, and that's all from us today. Bye. See you next time.